Hi. So a lot of you, as you've been going through the push button exercises, have been having a lot of difficulty with the two button one, which is not surprising. It's meant to be very challenging. So again, a refresher on what the two button exercise was. I think that was exercise number three, where one button is supposed to toggle the light. In this case, I have a red and a green. So that one button is supposed to toggle the red light and the green light back and forth. And then while the other one is supposed to, when it's pressed, let it go automatically back and forth or operate what I call the sirens effect. So here I've written the code to do that, and I just want to go over that, and then I'll demonstrate what it actually looks like on the Arduino. So here I define a whole bunch of variables that you're probably hopefully familiar with. So here I have the green LED hooked up to pin 8 and the red LED hooked up to pin 9. I have two buttons. So one I call the siren button and the other one the toggle button, and that's hooked up to pins 5 and 4. And then I have my usual on, off, and pressed constants just to make my code a little bit more readable. And then here are some more constants that help me make, first of all, my program more robust, but also just to help me remember the state of where it might be within a certain part of the program. So I created two constants, one called toggle and one called siren, just to indicate within the main program which button is sort of active. So if the toggle button is active, then a certain variable will be set to 1, or what I call toggle. And if it's not, or if it's the siren parts, then the variable would be called, sorry, the other variable would be called, would be set to siren or 2. And I'll talk about the variable that I create for that later on. So here are my usual other variables that we saw from the sirens lights exercise. So here are the slow delay time of 500, a fast delay time of 200. So it only pauses 0.2 seconds in between the lights. In this case, I want the light to go 15 times and when it's fast, and it's 5 times when it's slow. And here we're going to incorporate a button delay. In other words, how long is the button going to sort of pause for? We want to pause before we read the next button signal. Maybe I'll change that to 150. 200 seemed a little bit too high. Then I have some other variables to control the state of the light as well as remember certain states. So here I have one variable called the green LED state, and that's going to say whether it's on or off. And likewise for red LED state. I'm going to have a variable for counting how many times the light has blinked. So this is very similar to the sirens light exercise. I had a counter variable in there. In this case, I make it a little bit more specific and call it blink counter. Here's the variable that I'm not sure some of you, as you're trying this, might you recognize that you need, is that we need to know what state the program is in, whether it's in the toggle state or the siren state. So I created a variable called button mode, and later on in the code, it'll be either set to toggle, which is 1, or set to siren, which is 2, depending on which button was pressed and what we want to do within our program. And similarly to our sirens program, I have another variable to actually remember how long the delay is going to be when it's doing the sirens part. So by default, we're going to set to the slow delay time. So in our setup, I just want to set up initially what the Arduino is going to do when it first loads in. So here we define what the pin modes are. So red and green LEDs are outputs, and the toggle and siren buttons are inputs. When we initially have this Arduino starting, I've decided to have the green light on and the red light off. That's where it's going to start. And the delay time is going to be doing this slow part first. Here's the main part of the code. So here we will look at the loop. And so we have a variable to determine if button is pressed. So we need to sort of do this in two states or two parts. So remember the loop, the code within a loop is executing all the time. So it's going in an infinite loop essentially. So it's going to go down and execute over and over and over again. And it does this very fast, approximately maybe 1,000 times per second, depending how complex the code is. And of course, depending on if we have any delays in there. Obviously, we have a delay in there, then it's going to slow down how many times this loop would execute. But I would argue that if we don't have any delays and we're not waiting for anything, this loop executes approximately 1,000 times a second. So the first thing that we do is we go through and we just check if the toggle button is pressed. So that we're going to read the toggle button if it's pressed. Then if it is pressed, then we're going to have the Arduino operate in the toggle state. So in this case, if the button is pressed, one important thing that we need to do now is that if the button mode was not in toggle state already, in other words, if we're not in toggle already, then what we want to do is sort of set that state. So initially we're going to have the green light on and the red light off. But here we're going to need to sort of reverse the logic there, because later on, and I'll show you later on, we're actually going to turn the lights, we're going to flip the lights. So in this case, we're going to say if the green light's on, pretend that it's off. So basically, if it was in Sirens mode, what we want to do is remember which light was on and sort of keep that on when the toggle button is pressed. More importantly, once we have in here, if the button mode, if we weren't in the toggle mode, we're going to set button mode to toggle mode now. So here, remember to state that the last button really pressed was the toggle button, and for the rest of the program, we're going to look for that in terms of our logic. Then we go through in here. So basically, if it was pressed, so now we'll sort of activate the lights. So here, if the light is on, if the green light is on, we don't want to turn it off and turn the red light on, and vice versa. So this is how we get the toggle motion of that button. So basically, with each press, the light's going to go back and forth. So again, the weird part here is that because we want to capture the state coming from Sirens, so in other words, the button mode was not toggle, we're coming from Sirens mode. If the green light was on, we want to pretend that it's off, so that later on we're going to turn it on, and vice versa with the red light. So the part that most of you are having problems with now is the Sirens part. So in here, we do not want to loop. We do not want the loop doing this 5 times slow and 50 times fast, because now during that cycle we can't get the button to toggle. So we really want to sort of bring it down to a smaller scope, which is why I showed you the code for the Sirens, the exercise for the Sirens, where we did the code with the conditions. And so basically in here I did copy and paste that code because the logic is the same, but we sort of have to wrap around it with another type of logic. So after we've checked if the button is pressed the first time, so in this case if it was the toggle button, then we want to now check if the Sirens button was pressed. And if the Siren button was pressed and it was not in Siren mode before, so that's what this condition is checking. If the button is pressed, and in other words, the Siren button was pressed, and the mode was not Siren, so basically now we want to sort of kickstart the Siren mode. So the first thing we want to do is, now we're saying that the mode that we're in is now in Siren mode. We're going to set the blink counter to 0, so we're going to start the blinking counting the number of times it blinks. We're going to set the LED time to the slow delay time, because that's initially we want to have the cycle starting with with the slow delay times. So here's a delay of the button, just so that gives the user some time to let go of the button. Then, regardless if the button was pressed or not, what we want to say is that if we're in Siren mode, then we want to execute the Siren part, the links back and forth. And this essentially was the code that I showed you in terms of getting the Sirens go back and forth in the lights exercise. So here, we're going to turn the green light on, red light off, wait for that delay time, then turn the green light off and the red light on, and then again wait for the delay time. Then we're going to count how many times we've done this. And then we're going to check, well, we're in the slow delay time. If in other words, we're doing the slow part, then have we blinked the number of slow times that we wanted to? If we did, then we're going to change the delay time to the fast time and then reset our counter. Otherwise, if the counter is, if the blink counter is fast, in other words, we're going through we've done enough fast times already, then we're going to set the LED's delay time to slow and reset our counting of how many times the light flashes. So this code over here, if inside the if button equals Siren, is the same code that I showed you in the Sirens the light exercise. So let's upload this program. Okay, so there's my hookup. So it starts with the green light on and the red light off. So this button over here is to toggle, and this button over here is for the sirens. So here we go, I'm going to toggle it. So I'm going to press this button over here, and it should switch. Oops, I held it down too long. There we go. Held too long again, so maybe I need to go back and change that 150 back to 200. So here we go. So I sort of have to let go faster now. Now if I press the other button, it's going to go back and forth automatically. So let me actually set it to the red. And if I hit that, it should go back and forth automatically. I'm not pressing any buttons. It should do that for 5 times. And then I was going to go fast for 15. Not going to count, but hopefully it is 15. And back to slow. And in this case, if I press the button now, it's going to stop. And it's going to activate the toggle mode. So there it is. Oops, too faster. And then hit this button and it's going to go automatically. And then here, even during the fast time, if I hit the button, oops, it's going to stop, toggle, toggle, repeat, sirens mode. And again here, I'm going to stop it. And then I go back to sirens mode and it's going to go back automatically. So that's how the buttons work. Now, one thing that I do want to point out is that when it's in sirens mode, it's a little bit finicky in trying to get to stop. And I could try to do it in here. If I press it, oh, it did stop there. Let me try that again. So I pressed it, didn't stop. I pressed it there, it didn't stop. And there I pressed it, it stopped. So sometimes when I press it, it doesn't stop. And sometimes it could be the finicky of the button. But in this case, it's actually the way we coded it. So I do want to explain that a little bit. So the issue that here is still not a perfect solution, because what's happening down over here is that if we're in the sirens mode, we're doing all this. We're turning the green light on, red light off, delaying, turning the green light off, red light on, and delaying again. Within there, we are not checking if the toggle button is being pressed. We have turn on and off, wait for that half a second or 0.2 seconds, and then on and off, and then you're going to wait another point. So there's hope be a whole second that passes by, so we haven't checked if the toggle button was pressed. It doesn't matter if we press the siren button again because we're doing the same thing, so it doesn't matter. We don't care actually. But there with the toggle button, we're not registered. It's not registered. It is registered, but we're not checking it in our code, because the only time we check our code is we come back up to the top of our loop, and this is where we check it when the button was, if the toggle button was pressed. So when I was doing the demonstration, I was trying to be very careful, because in my code I knew the last thing that this part did was turn the red light on and then waited for half a second or 0.2 seconds. So what I was trying to do was when I saw the red light on, that's when I was trying to hit the button, the toggle button, to make it stop and go into toggle mode. I was trying to do when I was showing you that it wouldn't work was when the green light was on, I would try to hit the button, because I know there was less likely for that to work, because then we'll have to delay and then we'll have to turn the red light on before it would go back to the top and check for the button if the toggle button was pressed again. So that's the code to do it. It's a decent start. At least it's functioning as it's supposed to. In my next video, what I'll try to do is actually show you how to make this a little bit more fine-tuned, so that really anywhere within the cycle of the sirens mode, we could hit the toggle button and it should automatically stop and go into toggle state. So one thing I'm actually going to do, because I kind of recognize that the button kind of was finicky, maybe I'll change the delay time here to 175, and then we'll start off with this code the next time.